As a boy is walking home, a group of people bursts out of a nearby store in panic. A girl stumbles into him, knocking his phone to the ground. Before he can react, a man with a knife storms out, yelling threats at the two girls. The boy steps forward to defend them, telling the girls to run. As he fights the man, he gets stabbed and collapses. The man flees and the girls rush to help him. The boy later wakes up in an unfamiliar, lavish room where a maid calls him Master Cain, and another woman claims to be his mother. Confused, the boy checks his reflection in a mirror, only to see the face of a small child staring back at him. Panicked, he runs in circles, trying to comprehend what's happened. The mother, concerned, asks Sylvia, the maid, to prepare some soup for Cain, believing his strange behavior is due to him being unconscious for a week. As Cain processes the situation, he starts to suspect he has been reincarnated. Sylvia returns and helps Cain settle down and feed him soup. From her, he learns his full name is Cain von Silford and that he is now a 3-year-old noble. His father, Garm, is a margrave who commands an army at the southern borders of the kingdom of Esfort. Cain's mother, Sarah, is Garm's second wife, and he has a sister, Rain, who is 2 years older. His father's first wife, Maria, has 2 children, Alec and Jin, Cain's half-siblings. Excited by his new noble status and intrigued by the presence of adventurers and monsters in this world, Cain begins to explore his surroundings. Having lived alone in his previous life after his grandfather's death, he now finds himself embraced by a large family. When Sarah and Garm discover that Cain can read and do math, they are amazed, thinking their son might be a genius. Garm even asks if Cain has received a divine revelation, but Cain brushes it off, saying he just wants to learn more about his new world. Pleased with Cain's curiosity, Garm gives him permission to study magic and history, though Cain is told he will have to wait until his baptism at age 5 to officially begin using magic. Despite this, Cain secretly experiments with magic and finds he has an exceptional ability. His sister, Rain, teaches him about the kingdom's history, including how it was founded by Yuya, a former adventurer. Cain also learns about other races such as elves, dwarves, and beast folk. 2 years pass, and on the day of his baptism, Cain is awed by the outside world as they travel to the church. His sister shows him her magical status, proudly revealing her level 2 protection from the god of magic. At the church, the priest prays for Cain's path to be revealed. Suddenly, Cain is transported to a divine realm where he meets 7 gods. Rime, the god of death and rebirth, explains that Cain's death in his previous life was a mistake. Because he died while performing a good deed, the gods decided to reincarnate him in this new world, granting him divine protection. Later, Garm asks Cain to reveal his status. Cain, feeling uneasy about his immense power, makes an excuse and hides. Checking his status in private, he's shocked to find that all his levels are maxed out at 10. Worried about drawing attention, Cain uses magic to conceal the true extent of his abilities. Later, when he shows his family his altered status, they are still amazed by his strength, though unaware of how powerful he truly is. Garm warns Cain to keep his abilities a secret to avoid drawing the attention of the state. That night, Cain summons a monster and easily defeats it. Cain, filled with excitement to meet his new tutors, rushes toward the window and accidentally falls right out of it. To his shock, he lands on a woman's chest. Flustered, the woman assumes Cain is seeking nursing, gently explaining that she doesn't have any milk yet. Mortified, Cain quickly apologizes, his face burning with embarrassment as he scrambles to his feet. Cain meets his tutors, Maestra Millie and Maestra Nina. When Cain realizes that one of his tutors, Maestra Nina, is an elf, he becomes excited. Millie and Nina start his training in swordsmanship. They ask him to try a few basic swings, but they are stunned when Cain effortlessly demonstrates advanced skill. Surprised by his talent, Millie engages him in a mock battle, only for Cain to defeat her. Nina then steps in to teach him magic. However, she is quickly taken aback when Cain flawlessly performs advanced spells that would usually take years of training to master. Both tutors, realizing his extraordinary abilities, inform Cain that they can no longer continue teaching him inside the estate because his power is too overwhelming for the space. Cain suggests they continue his lessons outdoors. Millie and Nina agree, but know they need Garm's permission. Garm agrees, but he sets firm conditions. Cain must return before sundown, stay close to the estate, and be mindful of his limits. While training outside, Nina asked Cain to try an intermediate-level technique, but he performed an advanced move far beyond what she expected. Suddenly, they noticed movement in the bushes and a killer rabbit attacked. Cain swiftly defeated it using his air bullet spell and stored the rabbit in his item box to show his mother and sister later. Nina used her search ability to detect 4 more enemies nearby. Cain copied her technique, discovering that he too could sense the enemies. He defeated the remaining killer rabbits, but one monster retreated into the nearby forest. Millie warned Cain that the forest ahead was extremely dangerous, home to powerful monsters that occasionally staged outbreaks in the city. Despite the danger, they decide to continue their training for the day. Later at home, Cain checks his status and discovers he had leveled up to level 8. thanks to a skill that grants him 100 times the usual experience. Frustrated, he silently blames the gods for making him so overpowered. The next day, they visit the guild hall to look for a quest. While there, a large, arrogant adventurer mocks them for being low-ranked, assuming they were babysitting Cain. When he demands Millie pour him a drink and she refuses, the man grabs Nina. Cain, calmly intervening, slaps the man's hand, sending him to the ground in pain. Enraged, the adventurer attacks, but Cain effortlessly dodges his strikes. When the man drew his sword and attacked relentlessly, Cain caught the blade with 2 fingers and threw him outside. His companions threatened Millie, but Cain quickly subdues them as well, tossing them out of the guild hall. Millie and Nina thank Cain for his help. Cain modestly explains that he had only studied it in books. Over the next 3 years, Cain's training continued. As his tutor's contract was nearing its end, Cain wants to show his appreciation for their guidance. Remembering that Millie wants a magic bag, he ventures into the forest to gather the materials needed to craft one. Easily defeating powerful monsters along the way, Cain unknowingly causes a huge commotion when a guard spotted the pillars of fire from his battle and mistakenly thought the monsters were preparing to attack the city. The guard sounded the alarm, prompting Garm to lead soldiers into the forest. Instead of finding monsters, they discovered a massive crater left by Cain's battle. Cain completes the final part of his training and presents Millie and Nina with the magic bags he had made for them. He casually mentioned the powerful monsters he had defeated, leaving everyone in awe when they realized it would normally take a party of high-ranking adventurers to accomplish what Cain had done alone. At 10 years old, Cain prepares to travel to the royal capital for his noble debut, a mandatory event for all noble sons. His father, Garm, informs him that the journey will take about a week, assuming they don't encounter monsters. During the journey, Cain uses his search ability to detect nearby threats and senses a group being attacked by monsters 3 kilometers ahead. Cain warns Garm, but knowing they won't make it in time, he jumps out of the carriage, casts a boost spell, and races ahead. The soldiers are trying to defend a royal carriage from monsters, but they are overwhelmed. Just as a monster approaches the carriage, Cain arrives, swiftly defeating the creatures, including the monster general, using his fire sword. After ensuring the battle is over, Cain introduces himself as Garm's son and heals the injured soldiers. Sadly, some soldiers did not survive, so Cain respectfully stores their bodies in his item box for proper burial. Garm arrives too late to help, but is impressed by Cain's efficiency. 2 girls emerge from the royal carriage, Princess Celestia and Silk, the Duke's daughters. They thank Cain for saving them, revealing they had witnessed his battle from the carriage window. Princess Celestia collapses from the stress, and Cain calms her with the spell. The girls, grateful for Cain's heroism, begin playfully competing for his attention. Silk asks Cain what brought him to their aid, and he explains that he and his father are traveling to the royal capital for his debut. The girls, excited by the coincidence, suggest Cain travel with them. During the journey, Cain finds himself sitting between the 2 girls in their carriage, making him uncomfortable. When they reach a town, the girls ask Cain to stay in their room, claiming they feel safer with him after the attack. Garm objects, but the girls insist. Reluctantly, Cain agrees, but upon entering the room, he realizes the beds are too close together for comfort. The girls move their beds even closer, insisting Cain sleep in the middle, leaving him nervous and unable to rest properly. Upon arriving at the royal capital, Cain, the girls, and Garm are greeted by the vice-captain, who thanks Cain for saving the princesses. Cain then retrieves the remains of the fallen guards from his item box, honoring their bravery. At the king's hall, Cain meets the king, who declares that without Cain's intervention, the girls would not have survived. As a reward, the king grants Cain the title of Baron and his own mansion. Cain, though overwhelmed, accepts. In a private meeting with Garm and the king, Cain is congratulated on his achievements. The king, expressing gratitude as both a father and a monarch, explains that because of Cain's exceptional abilities in magic and swordsmanship and his blessing from the gods, the kingdom cannot afford to overlook him. To secure Cain's place within the kingdom, the king proposes that Cain marry his daughter, Princess Celestia. The Duke suggests Cain marry his daughter, Silk, as well. Cain is shocked by the sudden marriage proposal, but the girls are thrilled. The king explains that since Cain has already shared a room with both girls, it is only fitting he becomes engaged to them. Under pressure from both the king and the Duke, Cain agrees to the engagement. Cain finds himself at the capital church, where he prays to the gods and is once again transported to their realm. Zenem, the god, acknowledges that Cain's stats are far beyond any humans, making him the most powerful human in the world. Zenem offers Cain the chance to become a demigod, but warns him about the limits of his power, advising him not to push those boundaries recklessly. Zenem, sensing boredom in Cain's current world, suggests that he use knowledge from his past life to introduce something new and entertaining. Inspired, Cain decides to create an item that doesn't exist in this world, and Zenem approves. Returning to the mortal world, Cain meets a girl named Parma, who is training at her uncle's shop. Cain visits Timonus' shop and discusses his idea for a new product, drawing out the design and explaining the concept in detail. Timonus is impressed with the idea and thinks it could be produced affordably. Cain funds the project with a gold coin, considering it an investment, and Timanus promises to deliver a prototype. After some time, Timanus presents the prototype to Cain. Pleased with the results, Cain demonstrates the game to Parma, playing with her to show her how it works. Timanus is thrilled, confident that the game will become popular. Cain suggests creating a more luxurious version for nobles, knowing they would want something fancier. He provides additional funds for mass production, and Timanus is overwhelmed, swearing to give it his best. The prototype is then taken to the altar where Timanus and Cain swear their contract to the god of commerce. The prototype vanishes, accepted by the god, which ensures that no one else will be able to replicate the product for 3 years. Cain requests that the product be ready for sale in a month, with a special, extravagant version prepared for the royal family. As the time for Cain's debut nears, he heads home to prepare for the ceremony. His father, Garm, warns him that a newly titled baron will draw attention, especially from parents eager to introduce their daughters to him. At the venue, the royal family arrives, and the king delivers a speech about the importance of the next generation. Cain, with his family, presents the game he developed with Timanus to the king. Garm, unaware of Cain's side project, is impressed when Cain explains that the game is a source of income to help him maintain his new mansion. Cain's parents encourage him to socialize with the other children. As he sits with Silk, she begins teasing him playfully. However, they are interrupted by Habit, Corgino's son, who tries to impress Silk with a compliment, though she only greets him indifferently. Habit's friends demand that Cain show respect, but Cain introduces himself as Baron Cain, which they misunderstand, assuming that he is simply the son of a baron. Thinking Cain comes from a poor family, they begin looking down on him. Habit threatens Cain, expecting an apology for what he perceives as rudeness, but Cain refuses, calling out Habit's own rudeness. This leads to them stepping outside for a duel. Habit reveals that his friends are blessed by the gods and are able to use magic. One of them steps up and conjures a weak fireball, which Cain easily dodges. The second one attempts to show off, but only launches weak rock projectiles. Before they can attack again, Silk steps in, annoyed. She reveals that Cain is not just the son of a baron, but the baron himself. She orders them to bow since he outranks them, and they obey, begging for his forgiveness. The day after receiving his mansion, Cain visits and finds it in terrible disrepair. Using magic, he quickly cleans and restores the entire building. Soon after, Sylvia introduces himself to his new butler, Colin. Sylvia orders the maids to clean, but they are shocked to find the mansion already spotless thanks to Cain's magic. Colin reminds Cain to return home as his brothers are visiting. When they arrive, they're impressed by Cain's baron title and curious about his mansion, which they suspect might be haunted. Cain assures them it's fine, and when they visit, they are stunned by how beautiful it looks. Garm, Cain's father, realizes Cain used magic to restore the mansion and suggests it needs more decorations, like paintings or monster trophies. Cain decides to display a red dragon he defeated. Sylvia screams, and they find the maids shocked by the enormous dragon. Garm is astonished, explaining that red dragons are calamity-level monsters worth a fortune. As they continue exploring, Cain's mother accidentally triggers a magical toilet Cain installed, which sprays water at her. Garm and Rain, after trying it, ask Cain to install one in their home, realizing it will impress future visitors. Garm also reminds Cain that nobles with new mansions are expected to host debut parties. Cain is surprised but begins preparing. Colin provides a guest list, including high-ranking nobles like Corgino, whom Cain is curious about. Colin explains that Corgino is important, but only high-ranking nobles can invite the king. Cain prepares glassware as gifts, using his magic to create something unique. He also makes Hamburg steak, a dish from his past life, and adds fizzy wine to the menu, impressing Sylvia with both. Cain is summoned to the palace when the king hears about the party but hasn't received an invitation. Cain nervously explains that he intended to invite the king in person, which pleases him. At the party, Cain welcomes guests. The food is a hit, and the queen rushes out, demanding that Cain install the magic toilet in the palace. The king agrees, impressed by the innovation. During the party, Corgino arrives and rudely criticizes Cain's mansion. However, he is stunned by the red dragon and enjoys the food and wine despite pretending otherwise. He demands more sauce, grabbing it rudely from Sylvia, which irritates Cain. Cain comes up with a clever plan, offering Corgino a special surprise, only for the surprise to be the king. The king scolds Corgino for his rude behavior, embarrassing him. Silk finds the situation amusing, but the king realizes Cain used him to discipline Corgino and lectures him. Cain visits the barracks and runs into Vice Captain Dame, who directs him to a warehouse for his monster materials. However, the room isn't large enough for what Cain needs, as he casually mentions having an earth dragon. The Vice Captain is stunned, knowing it would take a whole party of A-rank adventurers to handle just one. In the courtyard, Cain releases all his A-rank monsters from his item box. Cain, however, still has stronger S-rank monsters hidden, but he keeps this to himself, knowing he's been granted overwhelming power by the gods. Dame then asks Cain to help train the knights and show him off to the captain. Introducing Cain to the knights as the hero who defeated 30 orcs to save the princess, the knights are skeptical because of Cain's young age. One knight offers to go first, but Cain disarms him in an instant with a boost spell, leaving the knight defeated. Dame, however, insists Cain fight all the knights at once, but before they can begin, the captain, Tifana, arrives. Mistaking Cain for a lost child, she hugs him, only to become excited when she learns of his accomplishments and challenges him to a duel. Tifana is a master swordsman and charges Cain immediately. Despite using just a wooden sword, Cain holds his own, surprising the knights. Eventually, Cain boosts his speed and wins the duel, leading Tifana to declare that she will marry him. Cain, flustered, explains that he's only 10 years old and already engaged to 2 others. Tifana isn't deterred and insists on seeking the king's approval. Later, Cain explains the situation and the king reveals that Tifana is an elf princess. Though disappointed at Cain's prior engagements, Tifana remains determined to marry him. The king advises her to seek her father's permission, and Tifana drags Cain off. Cain is soon called to see the king again, who presents him with a book containing emperor-level magic passed down in the royal family. To Cain's surprise, the book is written in Japanese, leading him to realize that the first king must have also been reincarnated from Japan. Faced with no other choice, Cain reveals his reincarnated status and his encounters with the gods. The king and his ministers are awestruck by his powers and titles, especially his status as God's chosen. While they vow to keep his identity a secret, Tifana interrupts with a letter from her father approving their marriage. Dragging Cain away yet again, she heads straight for the courtyard. Later, when Celestia and Silk learn about the engagement, they are initially upset but eventually accept it. However, they warn Cain not to accept too many more proposals, wondering how many people they'll have to share him with. Cain revisits the first king's book and discovers a personal message from Yuya, who was also summoned to this world and died in an accident. As Cain dives deeper into the book, Celestia and Silk approach, assuming he's studying for academy exams. Brushing them off, Cain runs into Tifana, who once again challenges him to a fight. The next day, Cain excitedly heads to the guild to register as an adventurer, having just turned 12. As he enters, an older adventurer advises him to be cautious. Cain feels a sense of familiarity but shrugs it off. Approaching the counter, he meets the clerk, Rishia, who guides him through the registration process. He decides to omit his noble status as a baron. After filling out the form and offering a drop of blood to finalize it, Cain is assigned the beginner rank of G. Before Risha can explain more, 2 adventurers rudely interrupt, mocking Cain for being a child. One tries to kick him, but Cain effortlessly dodges the attack. As the situation escalates, Claude, a red-haired adventurer from the renowned Ice Flame Party, steps in. He offers Cain advice on finding a party to rank up faster and shows him his A-rank gold adventurer card. Cain is impressed, but Claude humbly mentions there are higher ranks, including the legendary Triple S rank, once held by the first king. Suddenly, Lena, Claude's wife, arrives, scolding him for delaying their quest. She finds Cain adorable and offers help if he needs it before dragging Claude away. Cain checks the quest board and finds a mission to hunt goblins. Despite Cain's protests, Tifana insists on joining him. Using his search magic, Cain locates the goblins attacking a man. While Tifana handles the goblins, Cain heals the injured man. More goblins appear, but with Cain's magic-enhanced strength, Tifana easily defeats them. A giant goblin emerges, but Tifana slices it in half, dreaming about their future wedding. Suddenly, green lizards ambush them. Cain orders Tifana to retreat while he handles the creatures with his magic. Back at the guild, Risha is shocked when Cain reports defeating the green lizards, a C-rank quest. Cain mentions that he defeated 30 of them. Cedric, the acting guild leader, accuses Cain of lying, but the guildmaster intervenes, revealing Cain's noble status and heroic deeds, including saving the princess. Cedric pleads for forgiveness, but Tifana demands he be punished for insulting a noble. Cain graciously accepts the apology, and the guildmaster promotes him to C rank, though Tifana insists he deserves higher. Cain is ultimately assigned a bandit subjugation mission as proof of his abilities. Meanwhile, the gods watch Cain from their realm, laughing at the chaos he causes. Zenom reveals that Cain's strength is not yet enough to face an imminent threat. A being named Aaron, sealed away 300 years ago, is about to be released. Fearing what Aaron's freedom could bring, the gods decide Cain must train with a master to become even stronger. Sylvia burst into Cain's room, apologizing for forgetting to wake him up on the day of his academy entrance exams. Cain rushes out the door, teleporting to the academy to avoid being late. He checks in and heads to the exam room, noticing he doesn't recognize anyone and wondering if Celestia and Silk are taking the test elsewhere. The examiner announces that they only have 2 hours to complete the written exam and warns against cheating. Cain breezes through the basic questions thanks to his knowledge from his previous life, finishing in just 30 minutes. The examiner is shocked when Cain explains that he's already done. After the exam, the students move on to the magic assessment, which excites Cain. The examiner encourages them to use their strongest spells, reassuring them that the area is protected by a barrier. Cain is surprised at how weak the other students' spells are and decides to hold back. When it's his turn, he casts a simple fire bullet spell, but it causes a massive explosion that destroys a wall. The examiner is stunned by the damage, but Cain explains that it was just beginner magic. Next, the students are taken to the swordsmanship exam, where Cain is surprised to see A-ranked adventurer Claude, who offers to spar with him. Despite Cain's hesitation, the examiner insists, and they begin an intense fight. Cain uses his boost skill to match Claude's speed, and the two exchange blows at a level far beyond the other students. As they get more serious, the examiner stops them, worried they're scaring the others. Claude, impressed by Cain's strength, suggests they go on a quest together, though Cain isn't sure. After, Cain is told to go home and wait for the results. When he arrives, Sylvia is anxious to hear how it went, and Cain assures her it was fine. Overjoyed, she rushes to prepare a feast, even though he says that it's too soon to celebrate. Later, Cain is summoned to the palace, where the king questions him about the damage he caused. Cain explains that the examiner told him to use his full power, but even though he held back, the explosion was larger than expected. The king is amazed that Cain can use emperor-level magic, but refuses his request to practice it safely. Cain also learns he mistakenly took the commoner's exam, which amuses the Duke. At the academy, the results are posted, and Cain is announced as the top student, with Celestia and Silk following in second and third place. Silk teases Cain about the damage he caused during the test, and Celestia is upset she didn't see him during the exam. Cain is congratulated by his sister, Rain, who reminds him that he'll need to give a speech at the entrance ceremony as the top student. During the entrance ceremony, Cain delivers his speech, admitting his mix-up with the exam rooms and expressing his desire to make friends with everyone. The students cheer for him, and the king gives a speech, subtly warning Cain about causing any more trouble. In class, Cain expresses an interest in adventuring, but Celestia and Silk encourage him to focus on noble duties. Cain ultimately decides to pursue nobility, adventuring, and magic studies. As they leave, Cain steps in to defend Parma, a beastman girl, from bullies. Celestia and Silk arrive to support him, forcing the bullies to apologize. Afterward, Cain hears a mysterious voice calling him to the library. Curious, he follows the voice and finds himself in a strange place, where a mysterious man offers him coffee. Cain attempts to use his boost skill, but finds himself knocked out by a single punch from Aaron. When he wakes up, he discovers that Yuya and his wife, Rui, have taken him in. They also have a pet dragon named Jin, which excites Cain, who hopes to befriend it. However, Haku, another creature in the household, jumps on Cain and shows an apparent disdain for the dragon. As they sit down for a meal, Cain feels overwhelmed with emotion and tears up, realizing this is the first time he has had a real meal in 4 years. Meanwhile, Celestia and Silk are in the kitchen, worried about Cain but learning to bake cookies to welcome him back. After a year of training with Yuya, Cain is struggling and getting beaten up daily. He often wonders how he will ever defeat Aaron. He recalls a conversation with Yuya, who reveals that Aaron was once the god of amusement in their world. Cain is shocked to learn there used to be 8 gods, and that Aaron had forced everyone into a death game. If Aaron were to return, Cain fears that everyone he cares about would be caught up in it. This revelation motivates Cain to continue his rigorous training. Yuya further explains that Aaron is linked to Cain's past because he killed Cain's parents. Cain learns that his parents, Sei and Megami, were killed in a car accident and summoned to this world as heroes. The gods couldn't interfere directly, so they entrusted Yuya with stopping Aaron, giving him an orb to seal him away. In a fierce battle against Aaron, Yuya and Megami find themselves struggling. Despite managing to injure Aaron, Megami's magic proves ineffective. Just when things seem dire, Yuya takes a chance and successfully seals Aaron, but at the cost of Megami's life. As Cain reflects on his parents, he draws strength from their memory and finally overpowers Yuya, completing his training. Cain visits his parents' graves and thanks Yuya for looking after them. Yuya suggests having coffee, but Cain is eager to return to the other world. Yuya points out how different Cain looks, and with a flick of his power, Cain reverts to his original appearance. Cain prepares to return. Before he leaves, Yuya throws him a sword, instructing him to deliver it to the king. Cain teleports back to his mansion, where he is warmly welcomed by the girls. He apologizes for making them worry, but Celestia reassures him they had faith he would return. They reveal they learned to bake cookies in anticipation of his arrival, and he digs in with joy. Cain recounts his experience with Yuya to the king, who remains skeptical until Cain reveals the sword, which they both recognize. The king reads a letter confirming Yuya's role in Cain's training. Cain describes the grueling 5 years of facing fierce monsters daily, leaving the king astonished while the duke finds the tales amusing. The duke mentions that the guild has been searching for Cain during his absence since he hasn't taken any quests after becoming a ranked adventurer. Concerned, the king rushes to the guild for more information. The guildmaster explains that Cain was expected to complete a subjugation quest against a group of bandits. Cain admits he's been busy with the academy, but the master warns him that failure to complete the quest soon will lead to the cancellation of his registration. Left with no choice, Cain accepts the challenge. The master details the bandits' activities along the road to the capital, estimating about 10 in the group, and reassures Cain that as the strongest person in the city, he should handle them easily. Cain teleports to the road and uses his flying ability to scout from above. He spots the bandits attempting to rob a carriage and is surprised to see his tutors, Nina and Millie, escorting it. The client turns out to be Parma's father. Noticing Millie is injured, Cain heals her with his magic. The bandits laugh derisively at the sight of a young boy, angering Cain. He swiftly defeats them with minimal effort, sending one bandit flying with a single motion. After dispatching the last bandit, Cain remarks on the difficulty of holding back his strength. However, Millie and Nina express concern about his overwhelming power. Once all the bandits are captured, Millie asks why Cain suddenly appears. He explains he's on a subjugation quest, shocking the girls since such quests are typically meant for C-rank adventurers and higher. Cain reveals he is already a ranked adventurer, leaving them astonished that he skipped the C and the B ranks entirely. After taking the captured bandits back to town, the group stops by Timanis' item shop to drop off Parma's father. Parmas beams at Cain, delighted to see him working even on their day off from school, and admires his dedication. Millie, realizing Cain's new rank, wonders if she should treat him more formally. Cain insists they continue calling him by his name, assuring him he will always see them as teachers. As Cain slips away to report back to the guild, the girls chase after him. Upon turning in his quest, Risha is amazed that he finished it so quickly. Before she can report this to the guildmaster, some adventurers start harassing Millie and Nina. When one man tries to grab Millie, Cain intervenes just in time. The thugs recognize Cain and flee in terror. Claude appears, curious about the commotion, and is surprised to find Cain with Millie and Nina, revealing that Millie is actually his younger sister. The group shares drinks together, and Claude learns about Cain's impressive accomplishments. The conversation turns to the magical bags Cain crafted for the girls, prompting Lena to request one for herself, which Cain promises to make. Realizing he has missed a week of school, Cain vows to catch up despite Claude's confusion about why he still attends. The following day in magic class, Cain is reprimanded for using attacking spells due to previous damage caused. As the students recognize Cain's standout abilities, Claude introduces him during adventuring class, encouraging him to display his gold card, but Cain hesitates. Claude begins training the students, but Cain grows anxious as he waits for his turn to fight, feeling neglected. When the class ends and Cain leaves disappointed, his frustration boils over that night when he rampages through the forest and easily dispatches a dragon. Cain uses his search skill while running through the forest, feeling watched as he defeats various monsters, but the strange sensation lingers. Summoning Seth, who quickly kneels before him, Cain shares his unease and asks for help to investigate. Sensing an overwhelming presence nearby, Seth notes that the monster seemed drawn to it and summons his servant, Delmatia, who, surprised to see Cain, worships him as the god who will conquer the world, although Cain insists he isn't a god. Delmatia uses his special skill to summon creatures that spread throughout the forest, causing chaos that Cain handles with ease, impressing Delmatia. After returning to the guild, his friends are shocked by the S-ranked monsters he defeated and worry about even stronger beasts deep within. Meanwhile, Delmatia discovers an intimidation tactic warning them not to approach, prompting Seth to view it as a challenge. In the distance, Aaron senses their approach and unleashes a horde of monsters to attack. Seth teleports to Cain to inform him of the onslaught, and Cain instructs Rudy to alert his brother, while telling Claude to organize the town's defenses. Cain reassures them about his strong allies, touching Seth. But when Tifana arrives to hug him and mention an emergency order from his father, Cain insists she stay behind to help defend her hometown. As he heads into the forest with Seth, Delmatia enjoys the battle until a dragon appears, prompting Cain to cast Inferno and draw the monster's attention to him, preparing to confront Aaron. Cain's friends grow weary against the horde, but Tifana and her knights arrive just in time to assist. As Haku protects Jin from a fiery blast, Cain focuses on shielding his companions, activating his father's ultimate skill, leading to a clash of powerful magic against Aaron's forces, culminating in a massive beam of light. Just as he is determined to protect everyone, Haku and Jin bite him, leaving him bewildered. Seth and Delmatia appear, warning Cain that he has gone overboard. Nothing remains of Aaron, signaling the end of the fight. Realizing the onslaught is over, Cain learns that all the monsters have retreated into the forest, ensuring the town's safety. He celebrates with his friends, but soon faces reprimand from the king, who inquires about the beam of light visible throughout the kingdom, leading people to believe it heralds the arrival of a god. Cain explains that he had to use his emperor-level magic against Aaron, but the king reminds him that such devastating magic comes with consequences. Following this, a ceremony is held for Cain, promoting him to Viscount and granting him the domain of Dorenthal. However, Tefana reveals that Dorenthal is a troublesome domain where previous nobles have failed due to the Adventurers Guild's overwhelming power. Although Telestia wants to protest to her father, Cain remains optimistic about the challenge, believing it would be exciting to build a new town. His friends think he will do well, but remind him not to go overboard. As they head to Darnthal, it becomes clear that Cain has already stirred up trouble. A guard reports to the king that Cain went straight to the Adventurers Guild, easily crushing all the adventurers who tried to welcome him. Later, he intervenes when he sees men kicking a girl, swiftly ejecting them, but the guards end up arresting him. The king can hardly believe what he hears, while the duke finds it amusing. Cain shares his experiences in Dorenthal with Telestia and Silk when Seth suddenly appears, pleading for help after being kicked out by his wife for cheating. Just then, his wife arrives, paying her respects to Cain while questioning his opinion on Seth's actions. Cain believes Seth is wrong for cheating, especially since he has such a beautiful wife, causing the demon to blush. Seth warns Cain that women change after marriage, but Telestia and Silk reprimand him for that comment. Meanwhile, the king receives more reports about Cain, learning that he has even taken out the Dark Guild. The guard informs the king that Cain has gone even further, having built a wall, and soon they discover that he has constructed an entire castle, which Telestia thinks is even larger than the palace, leaving them to conclude that Cain has indeed gone overboard. Hey guys, thanks so much for joining us for another anime recap here at Anime Blitz. If you want to see what comes out next, then please subscribe and press that notification bell, and don't forget to like and comment as usual. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye.